All right. Thank you so much, Mustafa. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening for this important and timely webinar. I would like first to thank our speakers who will be talking to us about the recent violent escalations taken by the new Israeli government against Palestinian prisoners. I want to start by giving a bit of an introduction to the webinar this evening, and just to put things in context. So Israel's far-right occupation government approved a draft bill on Sunday, which will authorize the execution of Palestinian prisoners. The bill was proposed by the extreme far-right National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, and is supported by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Palestinian prisoners and detainees in Israeli prisons have always been exposed to wholesale violations of their basic human rights. The proposed bill by Israel's new extreme right-wing government will introduce and reinforce more violent and aggressive measures to inflict harm on Palestinians in prisons, their families, and on the Palestinian society as a whole. So there are currently 4,765 Palestinians incarcerated in Israeli prisons and detention centers who already suffer from harsh detention conditions and medical neglect. The steps taken by the new government are an extension to Israel's violent policies of subjugation and oppression of Palestinians. These new policies will include a death penalty legislation for individuals accused of quote-unquote terrorism, increased use of administrative detention, which is detention without a trial or charge. In fact, on 1st of March, 2023, Israel held 967 administrative detainees. 5 of them are children and 1 woman, compared to 489 Palestinians last year. The measures will also include imposition of harsher conditions, denial of medical treatment, and revocation of citizenship and residency of Palestinian citizens of Israel and residents of Jerusalem. All of these measures violate international law and international prohibitions on the collective punishment of protected persons as stated in Geneva Convention. Palestinian prisoners are granted protection by international law as resisting occupation is considered a legitimate right for occupied people. But Israel, as we all know, since its creation, continuously violates international law and is never held accountable for the violence and terrorism it practices on Palestinians. The new punitive measures taken against Palestinian prisoners forms part and parcel of Israel's broader structural violence against Palestinians since its creation in 1948. Lastly, the Arab Organization of Human Rights urges the international community to take steps to guarantee the rights, health, and well-being of Palestinians and prevent any further human rights violations. So to move on to our speakers, we are joined this evening by Father Isa Musleh, who's the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate's spokesperson. We also have Jean Bernard Veron, sorry if I misspelled your name, from Justice and Rights Without Borders. We also have Francois Desrochers, President of Justice and Rights Without Borders. We have Luay Al-Basyouni, who's a Palestinian electronics engineer in NASA. We have Dalia Shahade, an international lawyer, and Gilles Devers, who's a French lawyer and academic. Each speaker will have 5 minutes for their contribution, and I will notify you when these 5 minutes are over. And I would like to thank you again for your contribution this evening in this webinar. And to start, we have our speaker, Diala Shhade, who's an international lawyer, and she is going to be giving the first talk. Thank you so much, everyone, and Diala, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ruba. I will try to be brief since we have only 5 minutes.
Thank you.
I will start by saying that Israel must be declared as an outlaw state threatening the world peace. And I will go then to just try to comment on the law, because Israel leads the countries that have violated or ignored the international resolutions issued by the United States Security Council trying to establish peace in the region. Almost 50 United Nations Security Council resolutions were violated by Israel for the last half of century. Israel has also refused to recognize decisions issued by international judicial bodies, such as the ruling issued by the International Criminal Court for Justice in 2004, which called on the removal of the wall and on reparation for the Palestinians affected by the wall in the occupied territories. Lastly, Israel has also refused to recognize the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, which opened investigation officially in March 2021 in the crimes committed in Palestine, not only by Israeli officials, but also committed by Palestinian groups. And it also threatened to issue sanctions against officials from Palestine who would communicate with the International Criminal Court. Of course, this attitude from Israel to ignore the international community and the international justice is backed and supported by major countries like the United States, who has vetoed over 50 times resolutions that was supposed to be discussed at the level of, or issued at the level of United Security Council. Now back to the law that is very controversial for a state that has executed the death penalty only once in its history, exactly 61 years ago. And it was against a Holocaust architect, Adolf Eichmann, who was hanged for crimes of genocide and crimes against humanity. So basically, this new law is considering Palestinians who are defending their lives equal to Nazis who committed crimes against humanity against civilian Jews and other communities 60 years ago. The law is designed against those who, quoting, intentionally or out of indifference, cause the death of an Israeli citizen when the act is carried out from a racist motive or hate to a certain public, with the purpose of harming the state of Israel. This is a very controversial explanation of the purpose and the elements of this law. Because who is the Israeli citizen concerned? Is it the Israeli soldier shooting unarmed civilians and destroying and burning their houses? Would Palestinians who would try to defend themselves against an Israeli soldier shooting on them or burning their houses be sent to the death row simply for defending themselves? And who would not hate, because the law used the term hate, who would not hate their occupier, who would not defend their lives, the lives of their families and lands against crimes of apartheid, illegal settlement, forcible transfer, collective siege, destruction of houses, ethnic cleansing, mass killing and persecution, and slow genocide. The right for self-determination was recognized for the people of Palestine since the year of 1974. Today, 50 years later, Israel passes a law punishing by death those who would use the right for self-determination. Finally, the purpose of the law is set to cut off terrorism and not let terrorists go free after half of their jail time. This is, in my opinion, a very superficial approach towards the Palestinian armed resistance, because nothing would stop humans from defending their lives against a cruel occupier, from defending the rights of their families, from the atrocities committed by this occupier. At the end, the terrorist, because the law used the term terrorist, the terrorist is a notion that is very ambiguous in Israel, because what Israel is committing against the Palestinian people is acts of terrorism, is acts of crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes. So the terrorist is Israel. It's not the Palestinian people defending themselves against an Israeli terrorist occupier. What actions need to be taken? There is an ongoing investigation at the level of the International Criminal Court. Definitely, this action needs to be supported by lobbying among the state parties to the ICC. We haven't seen much of lobbying. We haven't seen at least the Arabic states trying to push forward the investigation in order to open a case. Some crimes, such as the apartheid crime, doesn't need any further investigation because it is part of the system and the laws in Israel. So it is sad that we haven't seen any new development in the investigation process for 2 years now. And it's even more sad that no one in the Arabic community or in the countries that claim that they want to put an end to the war and the atrocities committed in Palestine trying to push forward the investigation. Voilà.
Thank you so much, Diala. That was very informative. And you're absolutely right. Israel, what it practices on Palestinians is terrorism. But of course, the Palestinian is always the one who is portrayed as the terrorist because of like global power structures and how the US also controls all like international organizations where holding Israel accountable has been very difficult for Palestinians because of this asymmetrical power relations. Thank you so much, Dalia. And we now move on to our second speaker, Luay El-Basyouni. And just to remind everyone, Luay is a Palestinian electronics engineer in NASA. Luay, the floor is yours. So I think Luay, okay, Luay says that his mic is not working. So maybe we'll move on to our next speaker, Mustafa.
Mr. Gilsberg.
Yeah, Mr. Devers. Please, sorry, I feel like I'm butchering the names. Was a French lawyer and academic. Please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Hello? You hear
Hello.
me? Yes, you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good.
yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So happy to be with you, but very glad because the situation is so critical in Palestine. And quickly, I think I have two things. I propose two things. First is that we see we have a constatation of crimes and suffering of persons. But I think that as Europeans, we are safe, we are not in war, and we must use this comfortable situation to explain what is the Palestinian cause, and that Palestine was a state before Israel, And there is for 30 years before the Second World War, all the elements of the states for Palestine with people, with Muslim, with Jews, with Christian, with great unity. And actually, in the discussion, we see a strong question: do the people exist? But the Palestinian people exist in 1 century and all the history. And we need to explain this question. Israel was a creation by the military coup. It was not a creation by law, because the United Nations in 1947 made only a recommendation. And then it was a very strong attack, and the Nakba and all these elements, you know. And when Israel was so created, they said that they need to have international agreement. Because it was a new state, and how can you live as a state if you do not have international agreement? And we say we are new. The new state of Israel is the continuation of the state of Palestine on his new territory. So Israel said that it was the constitution of Palestine, and it was the reality was that Palestine existed before the Israel. So the question of do the people exist? There is no doubt on that. Is there Palestinian sovereignty on the territory? It is history. We take the answer, and we must to be very, very strong and on the priority of the Palestinian people on this land, and this land is from the river to the sea, and it was a total sovereignty recognized by all the actors in international law before the Second War. So I cannot accept that it is revisionism. When you see that in these days, people say, oh, I do not know if there is a state of Palestine. I do not know if there is one or two states. There is a state of Palestine. It was the first. It was stronger. And Palestine and Israel exist as a continuation of Israel. We have the declaration of the minister before the United Nations at the date. So I think that it is very hard for Palestinians, and especially for the young people of Palestine, because they do not see what is the political issue, what is the political solution. And we need to explain we are, you Palestinians are in the reality. And it is Israel who is in the denied, because nobody who is serious can say there is no Palestinian people, and you have a right to be in safe and in peace or your land. So I hope that we can communicate and make publication, and but I see that the Palestinians suffer of they are isolated, they are too much isolated, and they see what is the future for. The future is the law and the sovereignty and the reality and the people, and nobody can do anything against that. So it is education, it is communication, but it is absolutely necessary. Because we understand what the Palestinians said with this violence, and we see also what Israel said with this violence, and we need you have to respect the history of the two people, First. Second is I am close to proceeding, I am lawyers, and I work with the ICC. It is a very hard jurisdiction. It is not the jurisdiction of my heart, of a loving jurisdiction. It is always, since the beginning, a very hard jurisdiction, and always we have difficult relationship with the prosecutor. There is nothing new about that. But we must continue, we act, and we see we make our work of lawyer. We have facts, we have law, we have a judge, so we must win, and we want to go. It would be quicker, faster, but the actual prosecutor is very slow, and he has in reality no project for Palestine. And I say that on two reality. The first is that when we study the budget of the office of a prosecutor, there is a little money for Palestine. You can do no enquete of Palestine with a budget. So that is a reality. The second reality is that we have numbers of contacts in Gaza with the official services, with lawyers, contact with 60 lawyers, and a very fine team who is working in Gaza. There is a little team of 10 persons. They speak even Arabic and then English very well. We make very fine files for all the 100% and even this person. We have excellent investigation. We have excellent medical report, and it is the standard of international law in the world. But it is an excellent work of Palestinian, legal Palestinian and medical Palestinian, and they send me the document. At this day, I sent 3,000 individual cases to the prosecutor. And we continue, and we was in contact with the team these days, and this work continues. The prosecutor actually do nothing, but in reality, we cannot make all this mandate in doing nothing for Palestine, because nobody will accept that in the case. And why do you take this case and not Palestine? He's very interested for Ukraine and very strong problem in Ukraine, but he has also all the question of Palestine. So we must continue our work before the ICC, but actually we need proofs first, and we need a very international and strong pressure against the prosecutor. For the mandates, we have a good organization in Gaza. We can do ever better things, but it is good. It is very most difficult in West Bank, and because they are not the same organization, and it is very difficult for lawyers and for the society to organize. It is, in fact, more easier to organize in Gaza than in Jerusalem. But I get this appeal, and if we can have the mandates of the family in West Bank, because the prosecutor has all the information, all the news. He knows exactly what happened. He has a very strong team, so he knows exactly what happened. But he needs to be shocked. We have to shock the prosecutor, and we shock the prosecutor when a Palestinian feel mandates against for the court. So it will be very important if we can have relation and contact with lawyers or with activists or with family. We send them the draft of mandates, and then we have, if they have legal information, identity card, and the certificate of disease, and description of for wounded persons. So this simple documentation with a mandate, and it will be of the most important, paramount important, if when there is an attack in West Bank, and we know that in the days and in the weeks and in the months of the future, there will be new attacks. So I think that we need to have this organization, an attack in West Bank, in few days, a complaint before the ICC. Not a political complaint, not political is very important, but a professional complaint, and the prosecutor is obliged, in fact, to act. That is something. The other for the prosecutor, his attitude is very, very bad. I do not say more. But it is incorrect, and it is an appeal to the crime to not fight against impunity, and it is the responsibility of the prosecutor. So I hope that we can organize an important meeting in The Hague and make a delegation before the court and a very, very strong media plan to explain that Mrs. Bensouda get the competence of the court. We have a decision of February 2021. We say that Palestine is a state. Palestine is a state, said the court, not the prosecutor. The court said that Palestine is a state, that Palestine is sovereign on West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem Est. And it is not a petition, it is a judgment of a court, and there was no appeal. So it is very, very strong.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think you're we need time for other speakers. But thank you so much for this valuable and very much appreciated contribution. And of course, there should be more coordinated efforts to hold Israel accountable and to take serious steps, to hold Israel accountable in the International Criminal Court. And now we move on to our next speaker, Francois Durocher, who is the President of Justice and Rights Without Borders, who will be speaking to us next. The floor is yours, Francois. It seems that Francois has a technical issue. Is it solved? Okay, it seems that Francois will need a bit more of time. I think he is having some technical issues, but he'll be joining us later. Gil, would you like to talk more about the steps that should be taken and what kind of organizing and coordination should happen, and specifically that targets the last proposed bill against Palestinian prisoners? And in Diala, if you want to step in answering this question, as both of you are lawyers and work in the legal field, what steps need to be taken to target this specific bill that Israel, the new far right-wing government, is proposing against Palestinian prisoners? What kind of action needs to be taken specifically to target this bill?
Well, it is difficult to take actions on the national level in Israel, since this legislation is clearly aiming to assure the public that actions are taken to put an end to the armed attacks within Israel from Palestinian individuals or groups. So I don't know if there's any channel or any capability for local NGOs, human rights NGOs, to contest this legislation before Constitutional Court, perhaps, because it is contradictory with the claim of Israel to have a democratic state that supposedly respects the basic human rights, which is, of course, a joke after 60 years of the systematic commitments of atrocities, crimes against humanity against the Palestinians. I think it is good to try to do something on an international level, but even speaking about the international level, and I'm not going to say more than what Mr. Gil has said, Israel doesn't care about the international laws. It has violated dozens of international resolutions. It it has ignored International Court of Justice. It is ignoring and refusing to recognize the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. The only way actually is to push on a political level for a change in the politics of not only the United States, but the other states who keep silent towards what's happening in Palestine. Because if the majority of the countries of the United Nations decided to do something to put an end to this horrific situation in Palestine, some change could occur. Again, when it comes to the International Criminal Court, if at least the state parties to the ICC who come from the Arab League, there are 5 countries who are state parties to the ICC from the Arab region. We haven't seen them actually lobbying in any way at the level of the Office of the Prosecutor at the ICC. We need more political efforts done to try to give a value and a weight for the proceedings before the ICC, because even if trials before the ICC are not conducted in absentia, but at least if a case was open and hopefully warrants of arrest were issued against officials from Israel, this will definitely damage them on a political level, and it would prevent other politicians to take actions like these in the future. But all this need to have a good cooperation among states who are concerned with the situation in Palestine and who put ahead their commitments to the human beings in Palestine and to the international values of humanity and human rights before their interests as states and governments with the major countries like the United States.
Thank you so much, Diala. It's a very comprehensive answer. And it's making me think of to what extent actually now is international law effective in addressing the injustice that Israel commits against Palestinians. Palestinians, I think, have been trying for decades now to take some sort of justice from these international organizations, especially like from a legal perspective. But these attempts haven't been successful so far in bringing any kind of justice to Palestinians. Do you think, is it worth thinking of alternatives in terms of taking legal action outside of these structures or outside of these organizations that have been dominating politics, and to what extent can we be effective so far? Is it worth thinking of alternative structures?
We've seen proceedings in the last 20 years being taken on national level in the UK or in Brussels, but we've seen also change in the universal jurisdiction system of these countries after these actions. I remember that I think in the UK there was proceedings against Sibi Livni or General Doran Almog, and when they reached the territories of the UK, they returned in the same flight, so they were not arrested. They stayed in the flight. Also, we've seen judicial proceedings related to the massacre of Qana in Lebanon taking place in Brussels, but then the Belgian governments changed the universal jurisdiction terms and condition and made them more difficult. There's also a way to initiate a lawsuit against any country that provides a universal jurisdiction in its national judicial systems. But there are also very difficult terms of jurisdiction that has to be met. The people concerned and who were damaged by the acts of major crimes should be either a citizen or a resident. And we have to say something here. The international laws are definitely the only way to try to establish peace on this planet, but these laws wouldn't really have an effective result without the political will of the governments that have committed themselves to apply and comply with these laws. So the veto system at the UN is a very dangerous and terrible system that is basically destroying the democracy at the level of United Nations and at the level of the world, because the majority of the United Nations countries would, in my opinion, succeed to issue decisions trying to put an end or to punish the countries that would commit atrocities like the Israeli government is acting. But the UN veto system is simply blocking any democratic efforts at the international level to punish the states who would continue to act as terrorist states against their population and community, or against an occupied population like the situation in Palestine. So it is difficult without a change in the politics, in my opinion, to have a concrete change in the situation in Palestine.
Thank you so much, Diala, for your answer. We're gonna move on to Francois. Hopefully the technical issue is solved now. Francois, are you happy to start, or do you need more time? Francois? I don't know if he's still here. Okay, it seems that maybe Francois is still experiencing technical difficulties. To move back to Gil and what you were sharing with us about also your work with organizations in Palestine, can you tell us a little bit more about the coordination that is happening now, like transnationally, to help Palestinians in filing law cases against Israel in the International Criminal Court or other international avenues for seeking justice? Can you tell us a little bit more about this coordination with Palestinian organizations inside Palestine, and how does this organizing work happen?
Yes, everybody here know that it is very, very difficult. We have not a very fine and a quick solution. It is difficult, and it is always difficult for Palestinians. But I am okay with our friend. We say that United Nations can do nothing. They are controlled by important state, and we have all the experience to say that nothing good can become from the United Nations. When we want, there is politic, diplomatic, economic, social, cultural action for Palestinians. I cannot say about legal action. And when we see a legal way, what can we do? We have not an important choice. It is ICC or it is the European Court of Justice. And I think that the most for us, the most important and the most easier, the most effective would be the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg. And we have very, very fine case law from over countries and over a situation of occupation. So, we cannot have criminal condemnation, but we can stop the economic cooperation between the settlement in Palestine and under occupation and the European Union. So it is a very important economic affair, and also political and juridic, because they will say that the court is ready to say that there is no legality for the presence of Israel in his sovereign territory. But to act before the ICC, perhaps the European Court of Justice, we have two ways. The first is the decision of the government, and the government is Ramallah. But the government never use this way. So I hear each day that international law is ineffective. But if you do not make file to the prosecutor, if you do not have a legal action, we never have a case law. So and the condemnation. So the first is to say to the Palestinian Authority, what are the legal action you conduct? And in European law, they can the most important thing they do not do. And for them as activists, it is difficult. There are some possibilities, but it is in reality difficult to act when the government of Palestine do not want to act. But perhaps we can have a solution with a trade union, and especially agricultural trade union, because they have a legal right to act in European law. So I make consultation on this issue, and I think that the most important, the most effective, the best is this European way. And I'm ready to work with agricultural trade unions, and we can, it is something we can do. And the other is the ICC. But I say that ICC is difficult. But in reality, we progress before the ICC. When we began, 10 years, we said, never Palestine will ratify the treaty. And Palestine have no right to ratify the treaty. But Palestine ratified the treaty. And when he ratified the treaty, soon Palestine is a state under the mandate of the ICC. He is member of the General Assembly. So it is, and then you say, never Palestine will feel a complaint because there are international, but they feel a complaint in May, the month of May 2008, and it is 18, and it was very important. And then after this complaint, they say that never the prosecutor will open an inquiry, but Mrs. Bensouda make his work and obtain the competence of the court and open the inquiry. So it is difficult, but we must continue. We must continue.
Yeah.
And we must continue with legal situation of Palestinian individual situation. And the question of law, the question of proof are easy. The most difficult is to obtain the confidence of Palestinian to the ICC and to obtain mandate. But if we have mandates, we will do very, very good work before the ICC.
Thank you so much, Gil. That was really informative. We'll move now to Luay El-Basyouni. Luay, are you ready?
I think, is it working now?
Yes, it is. Perfect. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really understand a lot of the laws, but I look at it from a different perspective. I start with when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. He looked at Earth, he saw one thing. He didn't see borders, he didn't see countries, he didn't see nation. You just see Earth. And now we are in the 21st century, and we hear a news of really disturbing law. And it's claimed from what they claim to be a secular democracy. Secular democracy that only apply to people differently based on where's their origin or what's their heritage, what they believe in. So that to me is extremely disturbing. And it's even though we're looking at it just from the term of the law, there is background where this thing come from. These are ancient laws that coming from Talmudic studies, Talmudic laws that been applied to people, and we really then this is really in the way is what's next. This is really what's more concerning. There is no respect for international law, but we really got to look at it as a case of discrimination between people, and it's a state of apartheid. And I just really don't have much to say.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Luay, for this contribution. I think Father Isa Musleh is with us, and he will be speaking in Arabic, and I'll be doing the translation. Father Isa موجود؟ Mustafa, is Father Isa here? Oh, مرحبا.
مرحبا.
أهلا.
مرحبتين.
جاهز للنقاء أو للمداخلة القصيرة؟
في معي 5 دقائق أقدر.
محتاج وقت أكتر ولا كيف؟
في مجال.
لأنه رح تكون آخر متحدث عنا اليوم بالجلسة، فما بعرف.
أنا يعني لو أني يعني عشان أنا في محل بسوق.
شكلك عم تسوق. أوكي. طب مصطفى، في عنا مداخلات تانية؟
خلص تفضل احكي. تفضلي افتحي.
أي تفضل أستاذ.
أنا الأب عيسى مصلح. تفضلوا، يعطيكم العافية على البرنامج هذا.
بس أعطيني، أنا رح أترجم، بس أعطيني شوية وقت بعد أكم من جملة علشان أعمل ترجمة للإنجليزي. Father Isa will be speaking in Arabic, and as I said, I'll be doing the translation. تفضل أبونا عيسى.
تفضلي، شو بدكم؟ تفضلي اسألي.
احنا النقاش اليوم حول القانون الإسرائيلي الجديد، حول يعني فرض عقوبة الإعدام على الأسرى الفلسطينيين، وهذا القانون رح يتم مناقشته بالكنيست الإسرائيلي، وإذا تمرر وتم تبنيه كقانون، هذا بيعني إنه يعني الأسرى الفلسطينيين رح يتعرضوا، لأن عقوبة الإعدام رح تصير تنفذ ضد الأسرى الفلسطينيين. وكنا بنحكي عن أوضاع الأسرى بشكل عام، وكيف هذا القانون رح يعني يعزز العنف اللي بتمارسه إسرائيل ضد الأسرى الفلسطينيين. فإذا عندك مداخلة
بدي أجاوبك. أول شيء نشكركم على هذا البرنامج المهم. والقانون بإعدام الأسرى أنا بعتقد قانون ظالم، وقانون لا يؤدي إلى حل الدولتين فلسطينية وإسرائيلية ولعملية السلام. هي هدم لعملية السلام، وأيضا ازدياد الضغينة والحقد بين الشعبين.
طب أعطيني بس أترجم هاي الجملة. Father Isa is saying that the proposed bill of executing Palestinian prisoners will, of course, not lead towards peace or a two-state solution. On the contrary, it will further worsen the situation and increase the hatred and oppression. تفضل أبونا عيسى.
بالإضافة إلى ذلك نحن نؤمن كمسيحيين إن الإنسان هو صورة الله ومثاله، وهذه الصورة صورة الله ومثاله يجب أن لا تقتل أو لا تؤذى، لأنها تمثل جوهر الله أو صورة الله.
We as Christians believe that the human is the image of God, and these atrocities and oppression only distort this image, because essentially the humans are images of God.
بالإضافة إلى ذلك هذه القوانين تؤدي إلى نهاية حلم الشعبين، وهذا كنا ما نتمناه منذ سنوات طويلة. نريد السلام السلام السلام، لا نريد زيادة الحقد والضغينة في تاريخنا بين الشعبين الفلسطيني واليهودي.
The demands of both Palestinians and the Jewish people in Israel is to have peace, and this kinds of bill will only destroy any possibility for peace that both communities are striving for. تفضل أبو نايس.
إضافة إلى ذلك تشاهدين بأم عيونك المظاهرات الإسرائيلية والشعب قائم ضد الحكومة التي شكلت قبل فترة زمنية.
We have been seeing the protests inside Israel that have been organizing against the new Israeli government.
يوجد بين الشعبين اليهودي والفلسطيني يريدون السلام الحقيقي، وليس السلام الذي يتعدى على الغير وسلب الأراضي وتعدي على امتلاكات وأملاك المواطنين الذين يريدون ويناشدون السلام.
Both communities
كما فعل المستوطنين قبل في حقوق.
بس أترجم اللي قبلها. Both communities want peace and they don't want this peace to be destroyed by continuous land theft and continuous oppression, because this will not be a just peace or a just solution.
إذا استمرت هذه الأعمال سوف تؤدي إلى انتفاضة ثالثة ورابعة، وبعتقد كما تشاهدين وتسمعين السلطة الوطنية الفلسطينية تناشد العالم بحماية الشعب الفلسطيني من الأيادي المتطرفة، والعنف يؤدي إلى العنف، أما السلام يؤدي إلى السلام. نحن دعاة سلام، نحن نريد أن نعيش كباقي الشعوب، وهذه فرصة للفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين إنهم يعملوا بجد واجتهاد من أجل إحلال السلام وبحل القضية الفلسطينية. سوف تحل مشاكل العالم أجمع أنا بعتقد، ويصبح شرق أوسط مليء بالفرح والبهجة والسرور، وكفانا هموم وفقدان الابتسامة لأطفالنا ولشيوخنا ولنسائنا.
We want peace. Both communities want peace, and we've had enough with violence and killing and oppression, and for humanity to have a better future, the question of Palestine and Israel needs to be solved, and there should be justice for Palestinians, and it's the only solution that can be. أبونا عيسى، لأنه كل حدا ما عنا وقت كتير للمناقشة، في عندك كلمة تفضل.
بدي أنهي أقول نحن أبناء الديانة الإبراهيمية، الإسلام واليهودية والمسيحية، ونحن يجب أن نكون متعاونين وأن نعيش في هذا العالم الذي خلقه الله بفرح وبهجة وسرور دون عنف والتعدي على الغير والتعدي على حقوق الغير، منا إعطاء الحقوق لجميع الشعوب لكي نعيش بسلام وأن تكون القدس مفتوحة للجميع وانتهت القضية.
شكرا كثير أبو نايس. تفضل.
حب أو استطاع الغير هذا مرفوض جملة تفصيل. نحن مع السلام مع السلام. شكرا
كثير أبونا عيسى. Father Isa was also reiterating the fact that the three communities want peace, and peace is the only way that we can live in dignity and happiness and freedom, and no community should be violating any other community, and they should be living in harmony and in peace, and Jerusalem should be a place of worship for all religions and should be open to everyone. شكرا كتير أبونا عيسى. Thank you so much. And now we'll be moving to, I'm not sure if Francois is here now. I'm not sure if he's still experiencing technical issues. Francois, please can you unmute yourself if you're ready or if you are not experiencing technical issues? Okay, it seems that Francois is not here. Just John Bernard, are you still in the conversation or in the webinar? Okay, it seems that Francois is still having technical issues, so I think he won't be able to join us today, which means that Father Isa was our last speaker for this evening. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you for our speakers and specific for their valuable contribution, Diala, Gil, Luay, and Father Isa. Thank you for your time and thank you for your informative contributions. مصطفى في باقي شيء ولا تمام. Again, thank you all for joining and thank you for our speakers and hopefully see you next time for our next talk. Thank you.